which I think we're one of the highest in town. But properties have accumulated liens till it's impossible to get rid of them. And I'm concerned about if say, inherited properties, that there should be something in there for forgiveness of that. All it says is shall be given the opportunity to make payments. I think we can do a little better than just
We don't have that now.
the opportunity
We don't
to
have
make payments.
the redevelopment authority can't acquire a property and get it free and clear and.
Well, there's a provision in there, and Tim can probably speak better to this, about the inheritance. What we're looking at scenarios is where mom and dad die and there's no estate set up. And so what it is, you've got an unclear title. Who owns that property? And what can happen is the redevelopment authority, and the redevelopment authority is supposed to go through, kind of force the estate to open, force someone to say, yes, you are now you own this property. You inherit this property. What are you going to do with it? In this case, they would have the choice of then to sell it. If that's what they would choose to do, or fix it up, or repair it, pay off the liens, and of course, if they sell it, they pay off the liens to us. That type scenario. So it's really a matter of.
But this thing's not so toothy that we couldn't say, you know what, we're going to forget about that and leave you make your property improvements, get it up to code, or give you the time to get rid of it, something like
We have
that.
the authority to go through and do everything. I mean, if we go through and we decide that it's more valuable to the city to forgive this lien here, so they can put that money in their property, then the answer is yes, you guys can do that. You guys can do that.
What's the success rate have we had so far collecting all these liens that we put on properties that we cut?
Maybe 1%.
Yeah,
Maybe.
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe 1%.
Next to Neil.
The problem you really run into is not the city liens, and we've tried to solve this problem a little bit. The problem you run into is not the city liens, because the city liens are usually the small ones. It's the mortgage, it's the banks, it's the IRS liens, it's those liens on these properties that are really not worth that much money to begin with. You remember the mortgage bubble back that happened. We've got liens on some of these properties. The 126 South Pittsburgh Street, the one where the guy had the leg that fell off, it's got an insane amount of mortgage, like $120,000 mortgage on it. That property's not worth $120,000.
I think it's being. I thought that property was being acquired right now.
Maybe it's there now, I'm not sure, but at the time.
The redevelopment authority's.
126 South Off.
They have it now, that's right. At the time, that was a big one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was a big one at the time, that we couldn't do anything with that property. And we had, the demolition lien against it, which is not that big, and a couple grass cutting liens. But in comparison, what we can do now is we go and work with Tim and try and get them to file those liens, then to go through and enforce the sheriff's sale. So we can circumvent the tax sales process almost, and try to get that into somebody else's hands, clear out those liens, and get that taken care of.
Yeah, what this provision tracks the state statute, and what it's intended to do is to say, let's say that parents pass away and their children inherit a piece of property that's in serious code violation. So in order to avoid a situation where now they're the owners of a property with a serious code violation, and as a result, their personal assets suddenly become subject to attachment under the Act 90 ordinance by the city, this gives them the ability to address those violations to that property before they, are subject to the penalties under the ordinance. Once again, that requires that they actually inherit a piece of property. If it's a problematic property, there are ways that they can avoid inheriting it. But if they actually take ownership of it through inheritance, then they have some avenues there to at least forestall the penalties under the ordinance if in fact it's property that they were inheriting. So that's what that's intended to do, and it once again tracks with the state statute.
Okay. A few months ago, we had I read in here where it's protected for adjoining properties. And naturally, if you have a blighted area in an adjoining property, and it's protective of that, and even if it's just a distraught property, will this ordinance help somebody like the Cunios that were here a while back ago?
No.
Will not. Won't do a thing for them.
No. Cunios is a civil matter. It's between those two individuals. It's
No,
not-
anything then would be a civil matter, even if that house is falling down and it's a
Well, no,
risk
if it's-
to the
if it's falling
neighbors.
down, then I've got an issue with that. But
That
as long
you
as-
have an issue.
Then I have an issue
Yeah,
as a
you
city,
do,
yes.
but still,
Yes. But as far as the plants and stuff like that they've got on there, that's a civil matter. It's between those two properties.
okay. One final question. How many cases do you have in court now?
It's high right now.
100?
I've got garbage bills I'm taking care of, so it's really pretty high.
100?
Close to that.
Yeah. Will this ordinance end any of those or speed up to the end of any of those? I'm hoping you say yes. I'm looking for some light here.
Yeah, so that's a subjective question because it really depends. What it's going to do for me the most is going to give me some teeth in a letter that I write. Say, look, be careful. If you don't take care of the property, one of the things that could happen to you is we can go after your personal assets. One of the things we can go after is your car, your boats, your house that you have now, your bank accounts. And that's going to be a threat, and that's going to be something we can use against somebody who in particular is not. Remember, most of my cases get solved before we even go to court. Most of my cases get solved when I write the letter, they take care of it. That's 90% of the population. So I know we're dealing with about 10% of the population to begin with. I'm going to court. And of that 10%, are there individuals out there who will look at that and just laugh at me? Yes, there are. We know who they are. Okay, that's just those people are never going to change. But for the other rest of those folks, it might make a difference to help them motivate them to solve the problem or deal with the problem in a timely manner.
You have quite a few multiple, same parties, multiple offenses, correct? And this would aid in influencing them.
Well, yes. And the way I see it influencing the most is that both of those parties we're talking about, or a couple of parties we're talking about, they have other things they have to do. Demolition permits can be denied, so they can't take those contracts. They have business licenses that could be denied. They have things like those that could be denied, that they won't be allowed to go through and do, because they have back taxes. So that's going to have a little bit more teeth going forward as far as that, and a more immediate concern for us before going to court. Now, going to court, yeah, that's going to, I don't know.
Well, if you go to court, they're held off on all that stuff anyways.
I'm sorry, what?
If we are going to court, they're not eligible, they can't be fined or be paid or collect assets until they're done with court. And then if they appeal that, then we still couldn't until that happens.
That's correct.
It's still going to take a while.
Yes, correct. But we can prevent that. That again, yes, short term, you're right, short term, but long term, we're still going to get them. Instead of being the first appeals process, which is going to be 30 or 60 days. Maybe it takes us 90 days to 120 days. But in 120 days, we got it. Next permit that comes to due, we can deny.
Nobody else in the state has put this into play yet.
Yes, lots of people have.
How's it working for them?
There have been one case that went to the governor for extradition, and that did not go through. But guy came in and volunteered before the governor actually signed a paper. So that worked for somebody out of state. The rest of folks, they're using it pretty strongly. Most people are using it as the permit denial, as their biggest tooth. A lot of other people are using it as the threat. The only other issue we have with that is going through the Act 90 and collecting somebody else's personal assets. We have to go through and pay for it first. And that's always been our dilemma. So for instance,
we have to pay for what first?
For instance, demo. We got to demo a house, so we have to go through and demolish the house first. We have to spend the money from the city first. Then we go after the person's personal assets. We can't go after the assets first and then demolish the property. You see what I'm saying? We have to do it the other way around. And so therefore, it's a little harder on us to go through and do that. So we've never gotten that far, but there have been people that do that. Somebody in Philadelphia is working very hard on that one, and they do that all the time. I mean, not all the time. They do it quite regularly.
Philadelphia has had a lot of success. I know that's on a little bit of a bigger scale, but they have they've had a lot of success with it. It really helped them out.
And it stood up in court out there.
Is it going to do anything to help us collect taxes?
Then again, I can't say for sure, but certainly it's going to influence some people. It's going to influence people.
Can
So
we,
if I'm denying permits for somebody,
if they do not pay their taxes and are delinquent, what process is there to go after their personal items, selling properties? Because we have one person who owns 35 properties in the city that's delinquent on all of them. 50 grand in the county. What can we do against that individual?
I don't know if we can go through and force a tax sale on those properties, because that's a whole separate process. So I don't think we can touch any personal assets with taxes.
No.
But we can deny him permits.
So this is only for code enforcement, basically.
But we can deny him permits. So if he goes through and tries to build a house, if he wants to go through and get a zoning variance for something, he wants to go through and try.
What if he has a business in town?
If he wants to go through and try to open a business, all those permits are going to be denied.
If he already has a business?
That license can be denied.
And what happens when we deny the license? Can we force it to be closed?
Well, he can't operate, you know what I mean? So he could be cited for operating a business,
Without a license.
without.
How long does it take to cite a person without a license with a business before they have to be
I'll give him
closed?
10 days. Then I can sign them every day separate
I have
offense.
to look at the ordinance, but yeah.
When it comes to that, it's a lot like credit. You know, if you got good credit, everything's fine. If we've had issues in the past, we can start denying certain rights that, you know, you may want to go ahead and do something and
We can force his hand, at least we can keep him from making things worse.
Yeah.
That's a good way to phrase it. We can keep him from making things worse.
My understanding and experience with this ordinance from other municipalities that have it operating is it creates incentives and disincentives for people to not have, you know, delinquent properties, to not have code violations with properties. For a community of our size, it's going to be a fairly extraordinary remedy. You're not going to see it being used a whole lot. Now, the threat of it obviously could be used, but even still, the key thing to remember is that in order for it to really go into effect, specifically for the code enforcement end of things, it has to be a serious violation, which means it has to be already an independent violation of an ordinance or code that we already have.
Can they
you
have
know.
seriously high grass and get to that point?
No, and let's
Okay.
talk about that. And then the other thing is that it has to be an imminent threat to the health and safety of a dwelling occupant, occupants in surrounding structures, or passersby. So, you know, ostensibly a high grass violation is not going to be an imminent threat to anybody. You know, these are going to be obviously much more serious.
Structural issues.
Yeah, exactly. Things that people could really get hurt if these violations aren't.
Is this
taken care
something
of.
that before our health code officer takes that route, that he would have to get counsel with you and with the department head to discuss that first?
I mean, I think if there's a property or property owner that it looks like we would want to pursue any kind of Act 90 remedies under, I mean, I would definitely recommend that we have a discussion of how to implement that first to make sure it's being appropriately implemented, because there are concerns there about you know, refusing to issue permits to, you know, people is deprivation of a constitutional right. So we want to make sure we're very closely adhering to the requirements of doing that. So, you know, we would want to take a look. And that's why I say it's probably an extraordinary remedy that we would use on a very limited basis. But those circumstances, we would want to take a close look at those and make sure that, you know, we have all the T's crossed and I's dotted before we do that, so we don't open up the city to
Is
any
that
kind of
something that needs
liability.
to be added to this ordinance, the
One of those
policy, procedures, how do
Yeah,
we?
that doesn't, because that's all internal.
Okay.
So.
I will say that one of those things, one of the provisions in there in Act 90 is you have to, before you can do any of those things, you have to have them guilty 4 times in no less than a 6-month period. So you can get guilty in an 8-month, 9-month period, but you can't just slam it through real fast. I can't write 4 tickets, oh, by the way, here you go, you've denied permits. You know, there's a 6-month period that they have to have 4 separate guilty verdicts before I go through and start doing those Act 90s. And we've been operating under that premise since we did that resolution. And then again, I've only ever been using it as a threat, so to speak. We've never had to go through and do anything along those lines since then. But we've already been operating under that premise. And I've had conversations with Vern about Act 90 and Topper also about those things.
And that's why I say it would be an extraordinary remedy for those reasons. I mean, the circumstances where, you know, it falls under all the definitions and all the requirements to be able to use the ordinance would not be common occurrences in the city, just in general. Would you say, Tom?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unless something extraordinary happens.
Yeah.
Then why go through all this? Why are we
Because it
gonna do it then? What's the point of doing all this if
It's
it's
an
gonna be a very rare occurrence?
Because it's an incentive. Believe me, I've had a couple of cases that it's actually made a difference. Both cases, I got people to post, well, one is hopefully posting bond shortly, posted bond before they demoed the property, before they went through and did the property. Property's already declared a public nuisance, and I said the threat. The threat was, I'm going to go after your personal assets if you don't do something with this building. And because it's been declared a public nuisance in order to be demolished, you'll post a bond. So they posted the bond for it. And that's great, because now they're paying, spending their money to demolish the structure instead of us.
in my opinion, in the rare occasions it's going to be needed, we're going to want to have, we're going to want to be able to.
It's just another tool, that's what John said.
Exactly right. It's another tool in the toolbox. And I think, I really think that denying permits is going to, the back taxes denying permits is going to be our most used tool of it. And I think that's going to be,
Oh, I'm 100% behind
I think
that.
that's going to be an effective tool to
Believe
keep
me.
things from getting worse. Especially for that 1% we're talking about, that 1%, those couple of individuals.
It actually levels the playing field for everybody. Everybody's paying their taxes.
Right, exactly right. If you're paying taxes the right thing, why should you should be allowed to do that, as opposed to somebody who's not, why should they get away with it?
Amen.
I don't think I have anything else. Oh, one other thing. The enforcement of this department, City of Collinsville, will be the solicitor and all other employed or appointed by the City of Collinsville.
What does that mean, Tim? Because that doesn't.
Authorized official.
Like,
Let me look.
If you got a job with the city, you're an authorized official the way this thing reads. The city clerk, code enforcement officer, and City of Collinsville solicitor, and all others employed or appointed by City of Collinsville are authorized to take all actions necessary to ensure employment and the effect, purpose thereof.
The way I read that is, for instance, right now, we don't have somebody who enforces the fire code. I don't have the ability to do that. So if we were to go through and add somebody who enforces the fire code, we have a section of fire code that would be specifically addressing that, so therefore that person can go through and do Act 90. That's, I'm thinking just, that type scenario, of somebody who's responsible for an ordinance that has an imminent danger, imminent threat to public safety, they can go through and then their responsibility to enforce Act 90 also, or be part of that process, the Act 90 process. That's how I read that.
Yeah, the way we'd have to interpret that is it would have to be somebody who's specifically employed by the city or appointed by the city specifically for the purpose of enforcing this ordinance. Shelley couldn't write, tickets or anything.
I think she'd like
this.
to.
I know she would.
She might. We wouldn't necessarily just want everybody writing these things. So, but that's how that would be interpreted. Yeah.
Gets it.
Or what about in the absence of Tom, that a police officer could file the charges?
Well, this one doesn't provide for any charges to actually be filed, because this, once again, doesn't create its own separate charges. So once again, all the charges that could be filed under any of the other kind of existing ordinances or codes, if a police officer could file charges under those, that would be fine. Just implementing this in terms of, going after personal assets, for example, using the legal process to go after personal assets if it's risen to that level, or denying a permit or something like that. In those instances, then anybody who's listed here would be authorized to go ahead and make sure that process being followed and that permit denials are approved in that sense. So. Yeah, I mean, because once again, you can't be cited for violating this ordinance. This doesn't create any citable offenses. It just enables other remedies to be used in the event that somebody does receive citations for other ordinance violations.
There you go. Good.
Okay, covered it.
And just once again, just to clarify, this just introduces it.
Right,
So
so we got
it's gotta sit, and then at the next meeting, presumably, you guys will have further review before it can be adopted.
And will there be public comment for this one too?
I mean, if you guys wanted to, you could, but there's no requirement that there be for this.
Okay.
It's just the Act 90 because the state, not Act 90, the volunteer firefighter, that state statute requires there to be a public comment period before actual adoption of that ordinance.
All right. We ready to vote? City Clerk, take the vote.
Councilman Keady?
Yes.
Councilman Carpio?
Because of the leveling of the playing field, yes.
Councilwoman Tizan?
Yes.
Councilman Topper?
Yes.
Mayor Lincoln?
Yes.